I was in active labor, 8 centimeters dilated, an epidural that had only half worked, my husband's hand crushed inside both of mine. When the delivery nurse stepped quietly into the hallway and came back with a look on her face that I had never, in 32 years of knowing what fear looks like on another person, seen before. She leaned down close to my ear, her voice so low I almost couldn't hear it over the monitoring equipment, and she said, very carefully, "Mrs. Callahan, I need you to know that your mother is currently at the nurse's station, asking to speak with the hospital's patient advocate. She's telling them she has medical power of attorney over you, and she's asking about the paperwork process for a voluntary infant relinquishment." The contraction hit me at the exact same moment those words landed. I remember the pain of it, the physical, overwhelming wave of it. And I remember, underneath that pain, something else arriving simultaneously. Something cold and clear and absolutely, completely certain. My mother had come to this hospital while I was giving birth to my daughter to try to give my baby away. Before I tell you what happened in the next 40 minutes, tell me, where are you watching from right now? And what time is it where you are? I read every single comment, and knowing this story reaches so far means more than I can properly explain. I also want to be upfront, before we go any further. This is a work of fiction, written for entertainment. The names, the people, the events. None of it is real, and any resemblance to anyone living is entirely coincidental. My name is Rachel Callahan. I'm 32 years old, and I grew up in a small, quietly suffocating house in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, raised by a woman named Gloria, my mother, who was, depending on who you asked and on which particular day of the week you happened to ask them, either a devoted, sacrificial parent who gave everything for her children, or one of the most controlling, manipulative people anyone in our family had ever encountered. Both things, as I've come to understand over 32 years, were entirely true simultaneously. Gloria had opinions about everything: my clothes, my career choices, my friends, my husband, the neighborhood we lived in, and the church we didn't attend frequently enough for her satisfaction. But her opinions about my relationship with my husband, Patrick, were in a category entirely their own. Patrick Callahan was a kind, steady, deeply private man from a working-class Irish Catholic family in New Orleans. He was a high school history teacher. He drove a 7-year-old truck that he maintained himself. He made moderate money, spent carefully, and loved me from our very first date with a consistency and decency that I had, honestly, never encountered before meeting him. Gloria despised him from the moment they met. T. Not because he was unkind to me. He never was. Not because he was irresponsible or unfaithful or difficult. He was none of those things. Gloria despised Patrick because Patrick was the first person in my adult life who consistently, gently, and lovingly encouraged me to make my own decisions, rather than defaulting automatically to whatever Gloria had decided was best for me. A man who helped me find my own spine was, to my mother, the single most dangerous thing I could have possibly brought home. Let me tell you about the 5 years before the pregnancy, because you need to understand the architecture of what Gloria had been building. Slowly, patiently, with the particular long game persistence of someone who genuinely believed she was the rightful author of my life. Before you can understand what she attempted on the day my daughter was born. When Patrick and I got engaged, Gloria told me, privately, that she wasn't sure I was ready for that kind of commitment. By which she meant I would understand years later that she wasn't sure how to maintain her level of influence over a daughter who was about to have a husband, a home, and a daily life she couldn't directly observe or correct. When we got married, in a small ceremony that was warm and genuine and contained exactly the people we actually loved, Gloria spent most of the reception telling my aunts, in a low voice that she apparently believed I couldn't hear, that Patrick came from nothing and that she gave it 2 years, maybe 3. When I got promoted at my job, I worked as a hospital administrator, a career I'd built carefully over 8 years. Gloria's response, reliably, was to ask whether I was working too much and whether Patrick was okay with all those hours. She was never, not once in my entire adult life, simply proud of me without immediately redirecting the accomplishment towards something she felt I should be worried about instead. And when Patrick and I announced 2 years ago that we were expecting, that we had tried for almost 18 months, that this pregnancy had come after 2 early miscarriages, that this child was deeply, carefully, deliberately wanted. Gloria's reaction was not the one I hoped for. She cried, but not from joy. She told me, sitting at my own kitchen table, her voice shaking in that particular way of hers that was always half genuine emotion and half calculated performance, that she was worried about Patrick as a father, that she didn't think he was stable enough, and that she thought I should consider all my options before committing to something this permanent with someone whose background was so uncertain, I told her, for the first time in my life with real clarity, to stop. I told her that Patrick was my husband, that this was my child, that her opinion about either of those facts was not something I was going to continue absorbing, and that if she wanted to be part of this baby's life, she needed to start behaving like someone who deserved to be. Gloria went very quiet. She nodded. She said she understood. She left my house that day, appearing, on the surface, to accept what I had said. She had not accepted it. He had simply recalculated. I learned about the power of attorney attempt 3 months into my pregnancy, and only because Patrick happened to overhear a phone call. He was in the next room. Our spare bedroom, which we were slowly converting into a nursery. When Gloria called my phone, which I'd left on the kitchen counter, and he heard it ring to voicemail, and then heard, through the open doorway, Gloria's voice leaving a message that began, "Rachel, I spoke with a family attorney today about what options a parent has when they have concerns about their adult child's decision-making." Patrick came to find me immediately, phone in hand, his expression the careful, measured version of worried he did when something genuinely alarmed him, but he didn't want to alarm me before he fully understood it. We listened to the message together. Then we called our own attorney, a sharp, thorough woman named Diane Wells who handled family law. The following morning, Diane explained, after reviewing Gloria's situation, that what she appeared to be exploring was a medical power of attorney designation, a legal document that, if improperly drafted or fraudulently obtained, could theoretically grant another person decision-making authority over a patient's medical care during incapacity. It was, Diane told us, an avenue that occasionally got pursued and just as occasionally stopped. Because hospitals had specific, well-established protocols for verifying such documents, and because the threshold for overriding a competent adult patient's own expressed wishes was extraordinarily high. She can try, Diane told us, plainly. She will not succeed, as long as your own documents are clearly in place. But I'd recommend making sure your hospital has written, dated, on-file documentation of your own designated healthcare proxy. Patrick, specifically. Well before you're admitted for delivery. We updated our documents the following week. Patrick's name appeared, in clear, unambiguous legal language, as my sole designated healthcare proxy and medical decision-maker. We delivered copies directly to the hospital's patient records office and confirmed, in writing, that they were on file. Diane told us she hoped we were being cautious over nothing. We hoped the same thing. We were not being cautious over nothing. My due date was November 14th. My daughter had her own opinion about timing, and labor began on the evening of November 11th, quietly, 3 days early. Irregular contractions that became, over the course of 6 hours, unmistakably regular enough that Patrick and I drove to the hospital at just after 2 in the morning. I had told Gloria my due date. I had not told her, deliberately, which hospital we'd chosen for the delivery. A decision Patrick and I had made privately, months earlier, specifically because Diane had gently suggested it might be wise. Gloria found out anyway. I still, to this day, don't know exactly how. My best guess is an aunt who knew, and who told her in good faith, not understanding why we'd kept it quiet. What I know is that Gloria arrived at the hospital at roughly 7:15 in the morning while I was in active labor, while Patrick was beside me, while the delivery team was preparing for a final push phase that the nurses estimated was roughly an hour away. And instead of coming to the labor and delivery floor to be with her daughter, who was giving birth, Gloria walked directly to the administrative nurse's station on the ground floor and presented what she claimed was a medical power of attorney document, granting her authority over my medical decisions. Set he document, Diane would later confirm, was real in the sense of being an actual legal form. But it was several years old, predating both my marriage and our updated documents, and had been signed during a period when I'd briefly, at Gloria's suggestion, designated her as my healthcare proxy during a minor surgical procedure, a designation I had long since revoked in writing. Gloria had kept the old document. She had brought it deliberately to this hospital on this morning, and she was attempting to use it, combined with a verbal claim to nursing staff that she had serious concerns about the home environment her daughter was returning to initiate contact with the hospital's patient advocate regarding what she described to the nurse's station staff as a voluntary infant relinquishment situation. She was attempting, in plain terms, to arrange for my daughter to be taken from me before I had even finished delivering her. The delivery nurse, a woman named Sandra, who had been in labor and delivery for 19 years, and who I will be grateful to for the rest of my life, recognized immediately that something was wrong with what she was being told at that nurse's station. She didn't panic. She didn't confront Gloria directly. She simply, professionally, told Gloria that any questions about patient care or document verification would need to go through the charge nurse, excused herself, and walked directly to my room. She leaned down to my ear during a brief pause between contractions. My husband's hand still crushed in mine, the monitoring equipment still beeping steadily. And she told me, in the quietest possible voice, exactly what was happening downstairs. I want to tell you, honestly, what I felt in that moment. The physical pain of labor was already enormous. The kind of whole body, unstoppable physical experience that makes it nearly impossible to hold on to any other thought. And then onto that foundation of pain landed those words. Your mother is downstairs trying to give your baby away. And what I felt was not panic. What I felt was a cold, absolutely crystalline clarity. The specific mental state I have read about in people who describe emergencies as suddenly slowing down around them, everything sharpening at once. I looked at Patrick. I looked at Sandra. And I said, in the steadiest voice I could manage between contractions, call security. Call the hospital's legal team. Pull our updated healthcare proxy documents from the records office. They're on file. They've been there for months. And please make sure someone is documenting every single thing my mother says to anyone in this building, starting right now. Sandra nodded once, her expression shifting from careful concern to something considerably more resolved, and she walked back into that hallway. My daughter was born at 9:47 in the morning. 6 pounds, 11-ounce black hair, despite neither Patrick nor I having particularly dark hair, which made Patrick laugh in a tearful, bewildered way. The moment the nurse placed her in his arms, he cried immediately and loudly, with the particular emphatic announcement of someone who had decided, right from the very first breath, that the world was going to know she had arrived. Ed. I held her for the first time 30 seconds later, her small, warm weight against my chest, her face still scrunched and furious and absolutely, completely perfect. And I thought, in the quiet of that moment, that I had spent 32 years learning how to stand between someone controlling and the things I loved. I was never going to have to teach my daughter that lesson the same way I'd had to learn it. Downstairs, while I was delivering my daughter, the hospital's security team had located Gloria in the ground floor waiting area, where she had been escorted from the nurse's station after presenting her outdated document, the hospital's patient advocate. A calm, thorough woman named Miriam who specialized in exactly this kind of situation. reviewed our on-file documentation, confirmed Patrick's designation as my sole healthcare proxy, and informed Gloria, clearly and directly, that the document she had presented had been formally revoked in writing and had no legal standing. Gloria had argued, apparently at some length, that she had concerns about the safety of the home environment. A claim Miriam had documented verbatim, along with the security officer's notes from the entire encounter. The hospital's legal team was contacted. Our attorney, Diane Wells, was called by Patrick within the hour. The hospital's security camera footage from the nurses' station, the waiting area, and the ground floor corridors. Footage that captured Gloria presenting her document, making her claims to the nursing staff, and the full sequence of events from her arrival to her escort out of the building, was formally preserved at the legal team's request. Sandra, who had been present at the nurses' station during Gloria's initial arrival, provided a written statement to hospital administration that same afternoon, documenting, in her own professional language, exactly what Gloria had said, in what order, and to whom. Gloria was formally asked to leave the hospital premises by security. She did so, without being physically removed, though according to the security officer's report, not without a considerable amount of argument. We filed a formal legal complaint the following week, with Diane's guidance, based on Gloria's fraudulent presentation of a revoked legal document to medical staff in an attempt to gain unauthorized decision-making authority over my care. The complaint was taken seriously. The combination of evidence, the outdated document Gloria had presented, our clearly on-file revocation, Sandra's written statement, and the hospital security footage showing the full sequence of events from the nurses' station encounter, was, according to Diane, as clean a documentation trail as she had seen in years of family law work. Gloria hired an attorney of her own. That attorney, after reviewing the evidence, apparently advised her fairly quickly that her position was legally not defensible, because the revocation of the original power of attorney had been handled correctly, documented correctly, and filed with the hospital correctly months in advance. The matter ultimately resolved through a formal legal agreement. No criminal charges pursued in exchange for Gloria signing a document acknowledging the revocation of any prior power of attorney designations and agreeing to a formal, court-supervised framework for any future contact with our family, including the specific condition that any relationship with our daughter would require going forward. A structured, supervised arrangement approved by both Patrick and me. Gloria signed it. I don't know, and at this point genuinely don't need to know, whether she signed it out of remorse or simply out of practical necessity. My daughter is 14 months old now. She pulls herself to standing along the edge of the coffee table and looks extremely proud of herself every single time, in the specific way of someone who has decided that gravity is a personal challenge rather than a physical law. Patrick reads to her every night before bed, the same 3 books, in the same order, because she has opinions about sequence that she expresses loudly and clearly if he deviates from the established routine, which delights him every time. My mother and I have not spoken since the day she left that hospital. I don't know, honestly, whether we ever will. I've thought about it. The way you think about any complicated, painful, long-standing relationship, not with simple anger, but with something considerably more nuanced than that. What I know is this: Sandra, the nurse who recognized, in the space of a few minutes, that something was wrong, and who walked quietly to my room instead of simply processing a document she'd been handed, sent me a card 3 weeks after my daughter was born. It was a simple card, flowers on the front, a short handwritten note inside. Congratulations on your daughter. She arrived in exactly the right family. Keep that card in my daughter's baby box, along with her hospital bracelet and the first photograph Patrick took of us, 30 seconds after she was born. Both of us blurry, both of us mid-cry, both of us already completely certain about each other. Some things don't require a document to prove, but it helps enormously to have one anyway. Do you think I should have pursued criminal charges against my mother instead of the civil agreement? Or was the supervised contact arrangement the right call? Let me know in the comments below. Read every single one. And if this story moved you, subscribe to the Family Ledger for a brand new story every day.